Today we're gonna make a snowman. Seriously dizzying. You get dizzy as shit doing that. Look at my balls. One's bigger than the other one. A little crooked too, but maybe no one will notice in the dark. All right, it's another day, another phase. I bought 21 cans of the expanding foam spray, and I'm hoping that this is enough to cover old Frosty here in the background. Let's get to it. Okay, so not very impressive. It was fun anyway. You can see how sloppy some of the sections are where I've tried to do filler, where it's kind of like just bumpy individual bumps as opposed to the lines. So it's all quite different. But once I got a lot of that stuff formed, I was able to hold lines going around it. Okay, so this little technique of mine is definitely working. I'm just spraying a lot of extra volume on in an area, kind of in a big scattered zigzag, and then I'm just kind of dabbing this in with my gloved hand. I'm just kind of dabbing, filling in the cracks, filling in those contour lines, and so I'm hoping that when this fills out, it looks even more uniform than it currently does. But even in the wet, non-filled out version of this, it is an improvement. I see far more uniformity. I mean, it doesn't look pretty. It's not supposed to, in a sense, but it at least doesn't look like I was indecisive on how I applied the material in the first place. So I'm going to continue this on to fill in both sections of the snowman, and I'm sure I'll end up doing this on the headpiece as well. So anyway, back to the time lapse. All right, so I am finally done with my final dabbing of adding products to it. So it looks far more uniform now than it did, which I'm very pleased with. I did not sand it, I didn't cut anything off. And it looks so much better than it did. It's time to work on the head. Fairly risky considering the consequence, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Oh. That's why you're in training to be a ninja at all times. Weighs almost nothing now. That hat's a little small, but who cares? Do you go frowny face or do you go smiley face? I want to go frowny face because it makes it look menacing and kind of mean. And it's a prank Frosty. It's not like Frosty the Snowman as you know him. So this costume is obviously so big that I'm not going to be able to see out of these eyes or nose locations. My visibility is actually going to be down here through the mouth region. So we're going to use eyepieces for sunglasses to implant in here. So if you were just decorating a snowman, you wouldn't need to do any cutouts. You would just glue on or whatever, or stake on some coal or black pieces of felt or whatever you'd want to do to decorate. But I need something functional that's going to allow some visibility. So this is going to take a little bit of work and creativity. So I'm going to cut out holes to basically wedge these in there. I'll probably need to refoam just a little bit, and then when everything gets painted white, it'll look like it was meant to be in there in the first place. How are we looking? How are we looking? Yeah. So right now I just have that nylon taped to the inner walls, but that's not going to hold. I need to secure it with something that can hold the weight of it and deal with the rotation. So I'm actually going to try to secure that with the foam itself. So I'm going to be kind of overspraying the tape and the cloth itself to the inner walls of the head, and just kind of see what happens. This might not work, but I'm going to give it a shot. All right, so I have my red straps attached to the inside. I first just taped them, but then I built over the tape with the foam. Then I stitched on the soft inner part of the construction helmet so that it's now attached to those red straps. And now I'm spider webbing in from the interior walls, trying to solidify that because there's too much play in the system when I turn my head. And so I followed the red straps in, that wasn't enough, so now I'm building a blue tape spider web closer to the harness, and that way it's going to give me better triangulation around that. So I'm about to foam those blue tape lines, because keep in mind, all of this is suspended right in the middle of the head, and so there's not really anything to work with in there structure-wise. So I'm kind of creating that structure with foam and, for right now, temporarily tape, just to bridge with the foam. But that foam seems to be quite useful stuff. Okay, so I've done a test fitting in the suit and tried to put the head on, and the suit is just too tall for me to get like my helmet on in the head and articulate the head. So I'm going to, which I kind of knew all along, I'm going to take a little bit of height off of the neck area here and then figure out how the fitment's going to work with the head and see if I can get this height dialed in. Keep in mind, there's going to be a scarf around the neck to kind of hide this joint here anyway. So aesthetically, this isn't the most important thing. Definitely not the straightest cut of my life. I didn't really have a reference there. Not terrible either, but I'm definitely gonna have to spray foam regardless to just get extra material out for balance. So I'll flip it over, see how level this thing is or is not. I feel like we're finally approaching the right height though. I feel like if I stood in here, my shoulders are finally gonna be kind of sort of maxed out. There's a delicate balance between right where my shoulders are gonna fit underneath this and then where my head can stick out. So it's a tricky thing to get right. All right, that'll work. So I had a top hat, which I got on Amazon, and this definitely would go on my head for a costume. And it would work. A little bit on the small side. No, that's what she said jokes. Then I saw this at Hobby Lobby, and I thought this was just bangerang, and it had to go on Frosty. Boom. That's so much better. All right, we've relocated for paint. I didn't know what kind of paint to get. I have a gloss white. I thought being shiny would be good versus a flat, and got a just kind of Rust-Oleum paint and primer for multiple materials, blah blah. I don't know anything about paint, guys, so I'm assuming this is going to stick and be just fine. So we'll give this a shake and do some spraying. Frosty's finally white. Not bad, right? So this is a gloss white paint. It took almost 7 cans, kind of like 6.5 cans, just rattle cans. There were so many angles in here that it took a lot of extra spray. You know, the surface area alone would have taken far less cans, but trying to get in all the angles was tricky, to say the least. And then also the foam exposed parts where these cutouts are for all the coal and on the neck, on the collar, does not take paint very well. So in a future lesson, you might want to figure out how to cover that stuff before paint. Maybe spray just the faintest layer of foam in there just to get that like kind of plasticky seal, because this stuff took paint really well, but yeah, that exposed foam just didn't want to take much color. So not the greatest appearance wise. So where am I now? I've got to do all the trimming. I need to secure the hat. I need to make a scarf, which is my next project. So I bought 3 yards of fabric, just kind of this classic, you know, red and black checker looking pattern, which is going to look lovely. So what I'm going to do on this is, I've got this corrugated plastic, right? This is the stuff that you would make a yard sale sign out of. You can get this blank at, you know, the hardware store pretty cheap. I have extra material just laying around from previous projects. So I cut about, you know, like a 4-inch width, and I just kind of duct taped it together, and I worked it pretty good so I can make an easy circle. So this is going to sit right here at the neckline. So if I take the head off, I'm going to wrap this in the fabric so that this ugly looking neckline kind of disappears from view. So that's going to be a nice red fabric. And then it's hiding that ugly joint, neck joint, but there's going to be no interference. So when I turn the head and articulate the head, it's not going to get caught up in the scarf, and this is something that I don't have to maintain. I'd like to secure it maybe other than what is just hanging down below the body. So I don't want there to be any interruption up here. I don't trust that it's not going to somehow get caught up and tangled and become a problem during filming. I just don't want to have any of those issues. So I'm going to secure it to this, and that's also going to be a nice clean riser to blend off that neckline. That's it. Let's change my setup here a little bit and get to work on this scarf. So I've got my corrugated plastic. Again, I already cut this ring out, secured that. I've got my fabric. I've got, I want to say 3 yards or 4 yards, but I've got way too much fabric, so this has to be cut down for sure. I want it to be kind of probably a nice tight fit around the collar, but then it's going to be, of course, a knot and then some flowing end pieces. Got a pair of scissors, and then I've got some spray adhesive. I could probably attach this scarf to this thing 1,000 different ways. Could probably use, you know, a staple gun or all sorts of options. Maybe just safety pins or something crude. So whatever you got, I think the sky's the limit on attachment methods there. I'm going to go for some spray adhesive and maybe clamp it down and see what that does, and go to plan B if that's not working all that well. So kind of going to just rough fit this, cut up the fabric, see what kind of fitment I'm feeling out, and then before I commit to attaching it, and go from there. Okay, so I spent some time weighing my options, quite a few options for how to attach this thing, but I'm gonna go with the simplest thing that I have on hand, more spray foam. So I've got the scarf positioned, I have my extra fabric tied around the collar, and that's basically stuck where that's gonna be. So what I'm gonna do is on the interior of that, I'm gonna spray just a little bit of foam, collarbone area of the snowman, to the inner part of the collar. It's gonna hopefully cling to that fabric, and that's gonna be my attachment method. That does mean I need to follow up and tape things off so that I can come back and hit it with some white paint. Even though what I'm about to do hopefully isn't visible, I am gonna cover my bases and make sure that that's white. Let's spray some more foam, wait for it to dry, tape things off, and paint it up. It is finally time for me to try to mount this hat to Frosty's head. So, this hat's really lightweight and has these little tiny, probably hard to see here, but these little tiny perforated cutouts, but otherwise this thing's hollow. So I only have so much real estate here to mount. So I've thought about a couple other options, but what I've landed on once again is foam. Trying to get it pretty packed into the corner, the interior, hoping that grabs a little more material. I don't want this stuff to just fall out of here. So you're starting to see the overage now. Again, I am planning on this extra that you're seeing now that isn't fitting inside, hoping that I can somehow miraculously get this transferred onto Frosty and those two areas of foam merge and connect and bond to Frosty's big fat head. So I'll put a little bit of pressure on this. Okay, that hat's maybe just a little bit off center. I'm okay with that. I think aesthetically it shouldn't be perfect, but I definitely want it. I wanted the big aggressive lean, but I think that's just enough to get it across it. It's got a little bit of attitude, right? It's finally time to figure out Frosty's nose. Standard hex bolt, this is 1/4 inch by 5 inch. I'm gonna secure this from the inside so that this is poking out, and I'm going to sharpen this point so that I can put on, basically poke on and thread on a real carrot and exchange those out for fresh ones as needed for some authenticity. So, okay, so after a solid 5 minutes of redneck engineering, here's what I've got. I've got my 1/4 inch by 5 inch hex bolt. I have some washers in the mix. I've also drilled out these tin caps just to give this a lot of surface area, and I've kind of grinded and filed this down. Sorry, the camera's not focusing on this. It wants to see my face. Anyway, so this isn't like sharp, but it's definitely narrowed down and just smoothed out so that it's an easier edge to get a carrot started on, but hopefully it's not, sharp enough to hurt anybody. But I'll probably be drilling pilot holes into a carrot, to be honest, just to not split it and to give that better staying power. So this now needs to go inside. Probably gonna foam this up as best as I can, and I'll probably have, as I put a carrot on, I'll probably secure that with my hand inside before actually doing that job. So here's what we've got. And I know you haven't seen the inside necessarily complete, but you can see that foam webbing is securing that hard hat helmet in place so that when I rotate my head, it rotates the head. So I just had to work around some of that extra foam. So let's see if I can foam this. It's gonna be hard to access that spot, but that's okay. Well, it is time to wrap this thing up. So all of my touch-up paint areas are dry. All of the foam is set as it's going to be until I need to repair it and add more. The final touch-ups are going to be, I need to just put the lenses back into the places, and I need to drill a pilot hole to test out the nose. So I've started with a pretty small carrot. I didn't want to do anything too big, so I am going to drill a pilot hole because I'm assuming this carrot's going to crack. Wasn't really expecting that to be juicy, I gotta be honest. All right, last but not least, let's try out this nose. Let's see what happens here. Boom. Oh, I'm excited. Look how good he looks. I'm freaking pumped. Not tooting my own horn, but this thing turned out far better than I expected, not knowing what I was going to get out of these materials, especially the foam. But that stuff has held up beautifully. I am thrilled on how this looks sitting here. Once it starts being utilized, I don't know what the breakdown rate is going to be, how much damage is this going to sustain, all those parameters. I don't know how hot it's going to be inside, but those are things I'm going to just figure out as I go. But as far as first presentations, I am thrilled at how this thing looks right now. It looks super clean. It looks like a legit, 7+ foot decoration, and I am just pumped on it. I'm going to do a little bit of white touch-ups where I just messed up inserting the glass lenses back in because I broke through some of the paint, and now I see a little bit of yellow underneath, and just going to clean that up a little bit. But this thing is ready to rock. So, thank you for watching. Give it a shot, build your own snowman. Have some fun, guys. Thanks for watching. Woo-hoo!